Hello. The day I found out, a betrayal so deep, I had to destroy her. My name's Tom, and for the past 10 years, I've been married to my wife, Ashley. We've got 2 kids, Ella, who's 8, and Liam, who just turned 5. On the surface, we looked like the perfect family. It started with a smell. Not perfume, cologne. Ashley came home late that night, like she'd been doing more and more often, and brushed past me with a quick kiss. But that scent hit me. It wasn't mine, and it damn sure wasn't hers. She mumbled something about a meeting running late and disappeared upstairs. I stood there, staring at the back of her, my mind buzzing. The next few days felt like being underwater. Everything slowed down, muffled, like I was seeing the cracks in my life for the first time but couldn't react fast enough to stop them from spreading. Her phone never left her hand. She laughed at messages I wasn't part of. And when I asked who it was, she threw out the same excuses, just work or you're being paranoid. I wasn't. One Saturday, she said she was going out for a girls' day. The second she left, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. That's when I did something I thought I'd never do, I checked our phone records. There it was, a number I didn't recognize, text after text. Calls at 11 p.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. My heart was hammering in my chest as I stared at the screen. She hadn't been with her friends. She was with someone else. Someone I didn't know. And the worst part? I didn't even know who the hell I was anymore either. I confronted her that night, but not like you think. I didn't explode or throw accusations. I waited, watching, like a hawk circling its prey. She came home late, smiling, looking too relaxed for someone who'd supposedly been out shopping all day. How was it? I asked. Good, she said, throwing her purse on the couch. Just needed some girl time, you know. I nodded, biting my tongue, but my mind screamed, liar. The next day, I took it a step further. I called the number. No answer. I didn't leave a voicemail, just hung up, hands shaking with anger and fear. That's when I knew, this wasn't just some random thing. This was planned. This was hidden. I started tracking her. I know how it sounds, but I had to know the truth. She wasn't meeting up with friends or going to work dinners like she said. She was across town, in places that made no sense for a late meeting. I saw her car parked outside a house I didn't recognize, just sitting there for hours. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear the lies I knew were coming. I couldn't take it anymore. The next day, she told me she had a business dinner again. It was the 3rd one this week. My stomach churned as she left the house, smiling like nothing was wrong. But I knew what I had to do. I followed her. I kept my distance, heart pounding as I watched her car snake through the city streets. She didn't head to any restaurant or office building. No, she went to a house. The same house I'd seen her parked outside of before. She pulled into the driveway like it was routine. My blood turned cold. It felt like I was watching someone else's life. This wasn't happening to me, couldn't be happening to me. I parked down the street, my hands trembling, and watched her walk inside without looking back. I sat there, staring at the house. Minutes felt like hours, and every second made me sicker. It was real. This was real. I wanted to storm up to the door, demand answers, but I couldn't move. My world was crumbling, and I was stuck in place, watching it burn. An hour passed. 2. Finally, I saw her come out, her face flushed, looking different. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her, shake her, make her tell me why. But I stayed in the car, silent, shaking. She drove home like nothing had happened. I followed again, but I wasn't the same man who had left the house earlier. The betrayal was real now, crawling under my skin, twisting every thought I had into something ugly. When we got home, she slipped back into her routine, as if she wasn't living a double life. As if everything was still perfect. She didn't even look at me as she walked past, heading straight to the shower. That was it. That was when I snapped. I walked into the bathroom, my voice cold, sharp. Who the hell is he? She froze, her hand still on the faucet, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. I'd never seen her like that before, cornered, vulnerable. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then she spoke. "What are you talking about?" Her voice trembled, but she was trying to play it cool. "Too late for that. I followed you today, Ashley. To his house. I know everything." Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The mask she'd been wearing for months, maybe even years, crumbled. And for the first time in a long time, I saw the truth in her eyes. And it broke me. Ashley stood there, frozen, her face drained of all color. For a split second, I thought she might actually deny it. But when her mouth opened, no excuses came out, just silence. And in that silence, everything between us shattered. "I don't know what to say, Tom," she whispered, her voice so faint I barely heard it. I couldn't stop myself. "Just tell me the truth. No more lies. Who is he?" She turned her back on me, gripping the edge of the sink like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. "It's not what you think," she muttered, her voice trembling. It's complicated." Complicated? That word made my blood boil. I wanted to tear apart the bathroom, tear apart everything we had built together. But I held back, barely. "You've been lying to me for months. I've been watching you disappear, making excuses, and all the while, you've been with him. So don't give me that, complicated. Who is he?" She turned around slowly, her eyes already red, tears forming at the corners. "His name's Jake," she said, her voice barely audible. Jake. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Someone I'd never heard of, a stranger who had walked into my life without me even knowing. And yet, there he was, tearing it apart from the inside. "How long?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to hear the answer. Her lip quivered as she spoke. "About 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. While I was here, taking care of our kids, our home, our life, she had been sneaking off to be with this man." The betrayal twisted in my chest like a knife. All the late nights, all the phone calls, all the lies, it had been going on for 6 months. 6 months, I repeated, my voice thick with anger. "So, what? You were just going to keep lying to me? Keep sneaking around until you got caught?" Her tears started to fall, but I wasn't moved. "Not this time. I didn't want it to be like this," she sobbed. "I don't even know how it started. We met at a work event, and it just happened. It just happened." I snapped, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "You don't just accidentally destroy your marriage, Ashley. You made a choice. Every time you lied to my face, you made that choice." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But it did happen. And now, here we were, standing in the rubble of what used to be our life." I stared at her, the woman I had loved for over a decade, the mother of my children, and I didn't recognize her anymore. I couldn't believe that the person standing in front of me was the same person I had built my life with. It was like looking at a stranger wearing Ashley's face. "Is it over?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Are you still seeing him?" She hesitated. That hesitation said more than her words ever could. "We ended it," she whispered, but even as she said it, I knew it wasn't the whole truth. My chest tightened. "When?" "A few weeks ago," she said, looking away. "That was the final blow. She had been lying to me, cheating, and even when it supposedly ended, she still didn't have the decency to tell me the truth. It wasn't just an affair, it was months of betrayal, deceit, and manipulation. I couldn't stand to be in the same room with her anymore. I turned, walking out of the bathroom, every step feeling heavier than the last. Behind me, I heard her sobbing, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I needed space. I needed to breathe. But as I reached the door, her voice cut through the silence. "Tom, please. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I need you to know that I still love you. I never wanted to hurt you." I stopped, my hand on the doorframe. Her words hung in the air like a weight on my shoulders, but they didn't change anything. They didn't undo the damage that had been done. The love she claimed to have for me had been overshadowed by months of lies. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. "I don't know if there's anything left to fix," I said, my voice hollow. And with that, I walked out, leaving her alone with the mess she had created. After hours of driving in circles, aimless and furious, my phone buzzed. I expected it to be Ashley, throwing out another hollow apology, begging for forgiveness I wasn't ready to give. But it wasn't her. It was Jake. The message hit like a punch to the gut: "We need to talk. Meet me at the bar on Monroe Street. Now. There's something you don't know." I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. My wife's affair was enough to make my world spin out of control, but now her lover was contacting me. What the hell did he want? Was this some kind of sick game? But curiosity, no, rage, pulled me in. I wanted to see the man who had been with her. I wanted answers. And most of all, I wanted the truth, whatever the cost. I replied with one word: "Fine." The bar on Monroe Street. I knew it. A small dive, dimly lit, the kind of place people go to disappear for a few hours. By the time I walked through the door, the weight of the night was crushing down on me, but I was ready for whatever came next. I spotted him immediately. He was sitting in the corner, nursing a drink, eyes flicking nervously between the entrance and his phone. Jake wasn't what I expected. Younger, maybe late 20s, but not arrogant like I thought he'd be. He looked nervous. I walked over, jaw clenched, ready to rip into him, but his eyes met mine, and something about his expression stopped me. He wasn't here to fight. "Sit down," he said quietly. "I need to tell you something." I didn't sit. I just stood there, fists clenched at my sides. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me why the hell I'm here before I walk out that door." Jake rubbed his face, clearly frustrated. "Listen, I know what you think. I know you're angry. And you should be. But this isn't just about me and your wife. There's something else going on, something worse. And you need to see it for yourself." "What the hell are you talking about?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "Stop dancing around it and tell me what's going on." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Your wife. Ashley, she's not just having an affair with me. She's working here." My stomach twisted. "What?" "She's been working at this bar. For months," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Taking private rooms in the back with other men." I didn't know at first. I swear to God, I didn't know. I thought it was just us. But a few weeks ago, I found out the truth. She's been seeing guys for money. This isn't just an affair, man. It's worse than that. The room spun. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay standing. "What the hell are you talking about? You're lying. She wouldn't do that." Jake shook his head, a mixture of guilt and panic in his eyes. I didn't want to believe it either. But I saw it. I saw her. She takes private rooms in the back, away from the main bar, and guys go in. And they don't come out for a while. He swallowed hard. She's been using this place to meet them. I'm telling you because you deserve to know. She's been lying to both of us. I wanted to throw the table across the room. I wanted to beat the truth out of him. But something in his eyes, something real, something broken, made me freeze. Why the hell should I believe you? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Come see for yourself, he said, standing up, his hands trembling. Right now. She's working tonight. My heart stopped. He wasn't just feeding me some story. He was asking me to witness it, to see with my own eyes the thing that would obliterate the last thread of hope I had. My mind screamed that this couldn't be real, that this wasn't my Ashley. But the fire in my gut, the need for the truth, pushed me forward. Follow me, Jake said quietly, leading me to the back of the bar. The further we went, the darker it got. We passed the bathrooms, past the noise of the jukebox and clinking glasses, until we reached a hallway I hadn't even noticed before. At the end of it, there were several doors. Private rooms. The kind you never think about in a place like this. Jake stopped in front of one of them, his hand hovering over the handle. This is it. She's in there. I felt my entire body tense, ready for a fight or to collapse, I wasn't sure. My mind kept screaming no, this isn't happening, but there was no turning back. Not now. Not after everything. My hand was shaking as I grabbed the doorknob and twisted it, pushing the door open. And there she was. Ashley. Sitting on a couch in that dimly lit room, dressed in something I'd never seen her wear before, her eyes wide with shock as she stared at me. Across from her sat a man, older, leaning back, as if he was waiting for something. Or someone. She didn't say a word. Her face said it all. She wasn't here by accident. She wasn't caught up in a lie she couldn't explain. She was here because she wanted to be. And that broke me. The man stood up, muttering something about wrong room as he brushed past me, but I didn't care about him. My eyes never left Ashley. What the hell are you doing? I whispered, barely holding it together. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She was caught, and she knew it. This wasn't just cheating. This was a betrayal so deep, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. My wife, was sitting in a room in the back of some dirty bar, waiting for God knows what to happen. I can explain, she finally whispered, her voice trembling. But it was too late for explanations. There was no explanation that could fix this. No way back. The room was suffocating. My mind screamed at me to get out, but my body wouldn't move. Ashley stood there, her face streaked with tears, her lips trembling. The words, "I'm sorry," hung between us like some sick joke. "Tom, please," she whispered. "I can explain." "Explain what, Ashley?" My voice came out low, a controlled fury I could barely contain. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months. How you've been sneaking off here. Selling yourself in these filthy back rooms while I've been at home, thinking I knew who you were." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mouth opened, but no words came out, just more tears. The reality of what she'd done was sinking in, and there was no saving her from it. "I never meant for this to happen," she muttered, shaking her head. It started small, I didn't know how to tell you, and then it just spiraled. But I love you, Tom, I swear to God I love you." Her words stabbed at me. The nerve of her to stand there and tell me she loved me, after everything, as if love could erase the damage she had done. Love? I spat, shaking my head. "You don't love me. If you did, you would have never done this." Her tears kept coming, and for a split second, I felt something, pity, maybe, but I pushed it down. She had made her choices. She had shattered everything we had built together, and there was no room for pity. "Not anymore. You need to go," I said, my voice cold, cutting through the silence. Go, she whispered, confused. When we get home, you're going to pack your things and leave. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw real fear there. Tom, please, no. We can work through this. I'll stop, everything stops here. I'll fix this, I promise. Fix this? I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh even to my ears. There's nothing to fix. You threw us away, Ashley. I can't, no, I won't, live like this. She stepped toward me, her hand out, desperate. I'll go to counseling. We'll work through it. We don't have to tell anyone. Not even your parents. We can keep this quiet, and no one has to know. Just give me a chance to make it right. I shook my head, backing away from her touch. You don't get it, do you? I don't care about what people think, Ashley. This isn't about keeping things quiet. It's about what you did, what you've been doing for months. I pointed toward the door, my voice trembling. This ends tonight. Pack your things and leave. Go wherever you want. I don't care. Just don't be there when I get home. She stared at me, stunned, like she didn't believe what was happening. Like she thought, somehow, I'd cave, that I'd forgive her, that we'd patch this up like it was just another argument. But this wasn't an argument. This was the end. Her voice cracked. I don't have anywhere to go. Go to your friend's place, I snapped. Isn't that what you do anyway? Hide out there when things get tough. I knew she had been staying at her friend Lauren's place when we argued. It was her escape. Now, it would be permanent. Her shoulders slumped, her tears falling freely now. She had always been able to talk her way out of anything, always able to manipulate the situation to make herself the victim. But not tonight. Tonight, I wasn't budging. I couldn't. If I did, I'd never respect myself again. She wiped her eyes, her breath coming in shaky gasps as she nodded. Okay. Okay, I'll go. But, Tom. I'll fix this. I'll make it right. I stared at her, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built a life with, and all I felt was exhaustion. Don't bother. Without another word, I turned and walked out of that back room, leaving her behind. Every step felt heavier than the last. I pushed the door to the bar open, stepping into the cool night air, finally breathing for the first time in what felt like hours. As I drove home, my mind raced. How the hell had it come to this? How had the woman I loved, the mother of my children, turned into someone I didn't even recognize? The answer didn't matter. All that mattered was that it was over. By the time I got home, the house was dark, empty. I sat in the living room, staring at the wall, waiting for her to come back and pack her things. I imagined her going to Lauren's, sitting in silence, trying to figure out how to cover up the mess she had made, how to lie her way out of this, even now. Sitting alone in that empty house, the silence wrapped around me like a noose. I couldn't stop replaying everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the way Ashley had destroyed everything we built, treating our marriage like it was disposable. My chest was heavy with anger, with the need to do something, anything that would make her feel even a fraction of the pain I felt. And then the idea hit me. Dark. Twisted. The kind of thought you only entertain when you're pushed past the breaking point. Ashley's father, Neo, had always been a regular at shady bars. He liked private rooms, the same way Ashley did, and the thought of him indulging in the same filth she was involved in made something click inside me. I could use him. I could use the very thing she valued most, her family, against her. And I knew exactly how. The plan started to take shape in my mind, each piece falling into place perfectly. I knew where she worked. I knew Neo's habits. I knew how to manipulate this situation to make her world come crashing down in a way she'd never recover from. First, I called Neo. His voice was cheerful, unsuspecting. He always liked a good night out, and I told him I had something special planned for him. I invited him to the same bar where Ashley had been working those private rooms. He had no idea what I had in mind. He just thought it was going to be a night of drinks and fun. I pulled up to the bar, my heart pounding in my chest, but my mind was sharp, cold. This was no longer about saving my marriage. It was about burning it all to the ground. Neo was already there when I walked in, seated at a table with a half-empty beer in front of him. He waved me over, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "Tom, my boy. What's this big surprise you've got for me?" I forced a smile, masking the storm brewing inside me. "You'll see. Let's have a drink first." I sat down, pouring us both a shot of whiskey. He clinked his glass against mine, downing it in one go, completely oblivious to what was coming. After a couple more rounds, I excused myself, telling him I'd be right back. I walked over to the bar, scanning the dimly lit room, and caught the eye of the manager. He recognized me instantly. He had to, given how often I'd seen him when tracking Ashley. "I need a private room," I said, my voice calm but firm. "For the gentleman I'm with." The manager raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. He nodded, leaning in closer. "In 15 minutes, someone will come and escort you to the room. He'll enjoy the company, I'm sure." I felt my chest tighten as I realized what I was doing. This was it. There was no turning back now. I returned to Neo, who was already several drinks in and looking giddy. "So, what's the big surprise, Tom? You know I love a good surprise." I smiled, hollow and cold. "It's a private room. You're going to love it." His eyes lit up, a grin spreading across his face. Neo was a man who lived for moments like this: drinks, secrecy, indulgence. He had no idea that his excitement was about to destroy everything he thought he knew. 15 minutes later, just as the manager promised, a man in a suit approached us. "Your room is ready, gentlemen," he said, nodding toward the hallway. Neo's face brightened, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. I stood up with him, walking slowly behind as the man led us down the dim corridor toward the private rooms. Every step felt heavier than the last. I could feel my pulse in my throat, the adrenaline pushing me forward. But this wasn't about hesitation. This was about execution. We reached the door. The man turned the handle and motioned for Neo to step inside. "Wait here. Someone will be with you shortly." Neo chuckled, turning back to give me a knowing grin before stepping into the room. The door clicked shut behind him, and I stayed outside, pressing my ear against the cold wood, waiting for what would come next. Minutes passed, the silence suffocating me. My heart pounded as I stood there, every fiber of my being tuned to the moment. Then I heard it, the soft click of the door inside opening. And then the unmistakable gasp. "Dad?" Ashley's voice was sharp, confused, horrified. "Wah, Ashley? What are you doing here?" Neo's voice, filled with shock. The silence that followed was unbearable, but I stayed frozen, waiting for the final blow, waiting for the realization to settle between them. "What the hell is this?" Neo's voice now, trembling with disbelief. You work here? You've been doing this?" "My own daughter." Ashley stammered, her voice breaking. "Dad, please, it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" Neo roared. "I just got led to a room, expecting." "God, Ashley, what have you been doing? Does Tom know?" There was silence again, the kind that sinks into your bones. I couldn't see them, but I could picture it, her standing there, ashamed, with no excuses left. And Neo, the man who reveled in these very rooms, staring at the ruin of his daughter. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding but my mind clear. I didn't need to hear the rest. My plan had worked. The betrayal, the disgust, Ashley had hit rock bottom, and she had no one to blame but herself. I left the bar that night, leaving her and her father to deal with the wreckage of what they had become. The revenge was complete, and as twisted as it was, I felt satisfied. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Now, she knew what it felt like. I barely made it through the door before Ashley came crashing in behind me, her face contorted with fury. She didn't knock. She didn't call first. She just burst in, all rage and fire, her eyes wild and blazing with a hatred I hadn't seen in her before. "How could you?" she screamed, slamming the door behind her so hard the walls rattled. "You told my father. You set this up. What the hell is wrong with you?" I stood there, arms crossed, watching her unravel. Her face was red, her fists clenched, shaking with anger. It was like she couldn't contain it anymore. All the lies, all the deceit, all the damage she'd caused, it had finally circled back to her. "You humiliated me," she shouted, stepping closer, her voice cracking under the weight of her rage. "In front of my father, Tom. How could you? What kind of monster does that?" She was in my face now, her hands flailing, trying to provoke me, trying to make me feel something. But I felt nothing. Just a cold, hollow satisfaction. She thought she could ruin my life and walk away untouched, but now she was realizing that there was a price to pay. "You think this is my fault?" I said quietly, my voice cutting through her rant like a knife. "You think I'm the one who destroyed everything?" "Of course you did," she spat, eyes wide with disbelief. "You just set me up, led my own father into that place, knowing I'd be there. You wanted this. You wanted to see me suffer." I shook my head, a bitter smile creeping onto my face. "You're wrong, Ashley. I didn't do this to you. You did this. You've been lying, cheating, and tearing us apart for months. You made this mess." She opened her mouth to scream something back, but I held up my hand, stopping her mid-rant. "You want to talk about damage? About what's been destroyed? You've got the nerve to come in here, screaming about your humiliation, but you haven't said a thing about what you did to me. What you did to us." She looked away for a moment, her anger faltering, but then she snapped back. "I'm taking the kids," she growled through gritted teeth. "I'm leaving. Tonight. You won't ever see them again." Her words hit me, but I didn't flinch. I had expected this. Hell, I had been waiting for it. "No, you're not," I said calmly, reaching into my jacket pocket. "You're not taking anything, Ashley." She stared at me, confused, her face twisting in anger. "What the hell are you talking about?" I pulled out a letter and tossed it onto the kitchen table, watching as her eyes narrowed, her expression turning from anger to confusion. "What is this?" she demanded. "Why don't you open it?" I said, my voice cold. She snatched it up, tearing open the envelope with shaky hands. Her eyes scanned the paper, and I watched the blood drain from her face. The rage that had been boiling inside her vanished, replaced by shock, horror, disbelief. This is, divorce papers," she stammered, looking up at me, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "And it's not just a divorce, Ashley. I'm filing for full custody. The letter also contains an order to strip you of your family rights. You don't deserve to be around the kids, not after what you've done." Her mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, she looked like a fish gasping for air, trying to comprehend the bomb I had just dropped on her. You can't do this," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "You can't take my kids away from me." "I'm not taking them from you," I said, stepping closer, my eyes locked on hers. "You did that yourself when you decided to sneak around, to betray everything we had, to lie to everyone you claimed to love. The court will see what you are, Ashley. They'll see the truth." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the Ashley I had fallen in love with, wasn't the mother of my children. She was a stranger, someone who had destroyed everything we built without a second thought. "You can't do this," she repeated, her voice shaking, desperate. "Please, Tom, they're my children." I didn't blink. "They're not yours anymore. Not after what you've done. The court will decide, and I'll make sure they know everything. Every lie, every private room, every man you saw behind my back. The kids deserve better than a mother who throws her family away." Her hands trembled as she clutched the letter, her world falling apart around her. She stumbled back a step, her legs barely holding her up. "This isn't happening," she whispered to herself, the tears spilling down her cheeks. But it was happening. "You need to leave," I said, my voice steady, final. "Go to your friend's place, like you said you would. Pack your things and be gone by morning. This is the last time you'll ever threaten me with the kids." She collapsed into a chair, staring at the divorce papers as if they were a death sentence. In a way, they were. The life she thought she controlled, the one she twisted and manipulated, was over. There was no more bargaining, no more lies, no more power over me. I had taken it back. The day of the divorce hearing arrived like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I stood in front of the courthouse, the sun shining down, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. A strange sense of peace had settled over me. This wasn't just the end of my marriage, this was the end of a nightmare. Ashley was nowhere to be seen, and it didn't surprise me. She hadn't been showing up to much of anything lately. After everything that went down at the bar, she had spiraled, and hard. Word got around quickly that she had left our house, staying with her friend Lauren, but from what I heard, it wasn't going well for her. The pity party she was throwing for herself wasn't attracting much sympathy. People knew. People talked. And slowly, her lies started to catch up with her. Inside the courtroom, I watched as the legal process played out, but it felt distant, like it wasn't even about me anymore. The lawyer presented everything: the texts, the lies, the cheating, and, most damning, the evidence of her shady dealings in those private rooms. The judge didn't even hesitate. Full custody of the kids was granted to me. Family rights for Ashley stripped. She didn't even bother contesting it. She knew what was coming. When the gavel finally struck, I felt like I was breathing for the first time in months. I was free. Free from her lies, free from the constant manipulation, free to live the life I wanted with my children. And most importantly, I could protect them from her toxic influence. The paperwork was finalized within weeks, and I packed up what was left of her things, left them at the curb, and never looked back. Ella and Liam had questions, of course. They were young, but they were smart. They knew something was wrong. They knew Mommy wasn't coming back. I sat them down one evening, my heart heavy, but my words steady. "Mommy's going to stay with her friend for a while," I said carefully, not wanting to burden them with the ugly truth. "But you're with me now. And that's how it's going to stay." Ella looked at me with her big, curious eyes, always more thoughtful than her years. "Will we see Mommy again?" I hesitated, swallowing the knot in my throat. "Maybe. But not for a while." Liam, being younger, didn't quite grasp the gravity of the situation. He just nodded, happy enough to know that we were staying together. And that's what mattered to me most, keeping us together, moving forward. The house was different now. Lighter. Every room felt brighter, the air clearer. We weren't walking on eggshells anymore. The tension that used to hang over our home like a storm cloud was gone. I started working from home more often, being there for the kids, making sure they felt secure, safe. We laughed more. We spent our weekends at the park, going on trips, and I felt like a new version of myself, a better version. The man I should have been all along. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And Ashley? She wasn't doing so well. I heard through the grapevine that her life had taken a sharp dive after the divorce. She lost her job, something about her scandal at the bar getting out and causing too many problems. Without steady work, she relied on Lauren for a while, but that friendship quickly disintegrated. Lauren wasn't about to support someone who had dug their own grave. Ashley tried to reach out a couple of times, text messages, pathetic voicemails. They all said the same thing, "I'm sorry. I miss you. I miss the kids." She was pleading, desperate to be let back into the life she had destroyed. But I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every time I heard her voice, I remembered the betrayal, the lies, the life she threw away. One night, I got a call from Lauren. It was short, awkward, like she didn't even want to talk to me. "Tom. Ashley's not doing well. She's in a bad place. I thought you should know." I hung up without responding. It wasn't my problem anymore. I found out later that Ashley had moved into a cheap, run-down apartment on the outskirts of town, barely scraping by. She had no job, no support system, nothing. The perfect life she had tried to create for herself had crumbled into dust, leaving her with nothing but regret. But that was her choice. Her decisions led her there. And me? I had everything that mattered. My kids. My home. My life. Every morning, I'd wake up to the sound of Ella and Liam laughing in the other room, and it was like the sun rising all over again. We had made it through the storm. We were stronger now, closer than ever. I took them to school, packed their lunches, read bedtime stories, and filled our days with laughter. This was the life I had always wanted for them, for us. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Ella looked up at me, a soft smile on her face. "Daddy, are you happy now?" I smiled back, the weight of everything we've been through lifting. "Yeah, Ella. I'm happy. And we're going to be just fine. Bye-bye."